السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. عزيزي طالب الصف الثالث ثانوي، عامل ايه ويا رب تكون بخير. النهارده لو انت بتشوف كده الفيديو ده يبقى انت كده بتشوف ان شاء الله حوالي ربع القصة بتاعت سيادتك. القصة ان شاء الله قصة سهلة وجميلة، ولكن عشان نكون بس عارفين هنمشي الفيديو بتاعنا ازاي عشان نستفاد منه كويس جدا. اول حاجة احنا نحكي لك كده القصة بطريقة كأننا يعني ايه حكاية عن مصر كده. الحكاية دي هي مجرد انها هتسهل عليك احداث القصة وتخليك تفهمها كويس جدا، ولكن ما تعرفش تجاوب، لان انا بالنسبة لك هحكي لك كده بملخص على العربي بسرعة. اما صديقي بالنسبة لك لو عايز بقى تجاوب كويس يبقى احنا تمشي معانا بالتسلسل اللي انا هقوله لك. طب تاني جزء من الفيديو هيكون ايه بالنسبه لنا؟ هنقرا لك كل تشابتر بالنسبه لنا. اول حاجه نقرا الكلمات بتاعته. طب الكلمات شرط 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 تحفظها. تاني شرط 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 تحفظها، لانك لو ما حفظتش الكلمات مش هتعرف تجاوب اصلا. طب انا مثلا وقفت الفيديو وقعدت ان انا اكتب الكلمات وراك وحفظتها والدنيا دي تمام. افهم الفيديو كويس جدا. عامل لكم طريقه لذيذه جدا جدا جدا، وانك انت هتتفرج على الفيديو وهتلاقي فيه فيديو قصير كده، فيلم صغير بيروح للشابتر 1، بعد نرجع نتفرج على شابتر 2 فيديو صغير كده. يعني هثبتها لك وانت في الاخر اعرف يا مستر اجاوب باللي انا فاهمه. طبعا يعني القصه مش لازم حاجه احفظها ثابته، لا يفهم تقدر تجاوب عادي خالص، ولكن من خلال السياق. انا هحاول اسالك برضو ان شاء الله الكتاب هيبقى فيه بعض الاسئله المجابه، سؤال باجابه متجاوبين ومترجمين، يعني ما عليك غير انك بس تقرا كل سؤال كده اكتر من مره. هناخد النهارده قد ايه؟ هناخد النهارده حوالي كده 4 chapters. يلا بينا. يلا بينا دلوقتي نقرا مع بعض كلمات شابتر 1. يلا بينا. هتظهر قدامك ان شاء الله مترجمه، الكلمه مترجمه، فانت مجرد انك هتقعد تحفظ. يلا بينا. شابتر 1 The Arrival at Marseille. هو ده بالنسبه لنا عنوان شابتر 1، وصول الى مرسيليا. يلا بينا. Acquisition Anchor Betrothal Bitterness Bravery Cargo Celebrate Clinch Command Confidently جاي من كلمة confidence اللي هي ثقة. Confirm Embrace Faithfully A gangplank Gravely Eager Innocent Tremble Matter Malice Mate. وخلي بالك لان ده إدموند دانتي كان هو ميت، مساعد قبطان. Modestly Dog Poverty Persecutor Sparkle Traitor Seize Wages Wisdom Humiliation Impress Insufferable Jealousy Deck Purser Accuse Revenge. ودي كانت كلمات شابتر 1. يلا بينا نقرأ شابتر 1 بشكل سريع. بس قبل ما نقرأ شابتر 1 تعال بسرعة صديقي ألخص لك أحداث شابتر 1 بشكل سريع كده الأول. هو شابتر 1 بيحكي عن إيه بالظبط؟ في شاب اسمه إدموند دانتي ده بالنسبة لنا كان شاب كان شغال على سفينة من أحد السفن الكبيرة جدا في المدينة، وهي كان اسمها سفينة فرعون. السفينة دي يا صديقي العزيز كان بيعمل عليها أكتر من شخص، وكان ليها قبطان أساسي، أما كان إدموند دانتي هو مجرد مساعد قبطان. وكانت السفينة دي بتحمل كارجو، الكثير من البضائع، وكانت هتروح تلف وترجع لميناء مرسيليا. ولكن يا صديقي العزيز حصل موقف على السفينة غريب شوية، إن إدموند دانتي وهو على متن السفينة قبطان قبل ما يموت قام مديله ورقة. إيه ده، هو القبطان بتاعها مات؟ ما هو القبطان هيتعرض لوعكة صحية وهيبدأ إن هو يموت. طب مين اللي هيكون بعد القبطان موجود؟ إدموند دانتي، الشاب اللي عنده 19 سنة اللي هيبدأ إن هو يتولى قيادة السفينة ويلقى على عاتقه المسؤولية. وهنا يا صديقي العزيز هيبدأ إدموند دانتي إن هو يتولى قيادة السفينة بعد موت القبطان الأساسي. وكل الناس وكل البحارة قعدوا يقولوا لا ده شاب صغير مش قد المسؤولية دي، ولكن إدموند دانتي هيقدر ببراعة وبمهارة إن هو يقود السفينة ويتعامل مع البحارة ويتعامل مع التجار ويرجع كمان البضائع وكل حاجة تاني لميناء مرسيليا. واول ما يوصل بالسلامه هيلاقي في كراود اوف بيبل، جامع من الناس. الجامع من الناس ده اللي هيسقف له هيفضل مهيص كده ليه ان هو رجع بالسلامه. ولكن إدموند دانتي ما بين كل الناس اللي كانت واقفة دي كان في 2 مهمين قوي بالنسبة له. his old father والده الراجل الكبير في السن and مرسيدس. ومرسيدس هي البنت اللي هو كان بيحبها وموعدها بالجواز، المفروض ان هو كان هيتزوجها. مرسيدس وبدا والده ان هم كانوا فخورين بيه جدا وباصين بصه فخر ليه، وهو بلغه ان هو يكون القبطان القادم بعد وصوله سن 19 سنه، بسبب ان مسيو موريل وهو ده صاحب السفينه. خلي بالك مسيو موريل ما كانش بحار، ده كان ميرشنت، كان راجل تاجر. طب مين هو مسيو موريل يا مستر؟ ما تلخبطنيش، ده صديقي كان صاحب السفينه اصلا اللي كان بيشتغل عنده مين؟ إدموند دانتي. اول ما شاف إدموند دانتي قال له I'm so proud of you، انا فخور بيك جدا يا ولد، وانت في سن 19 سنه كن انت القائد الاول والاخير لتلك السفينه. هنا إدموند دانتي كان فخور جدا، والده بص له بفخر شديد جدا. حتى مرسيدس بصت له كده قالت له انا ما عنديش طموحات في الحياه كبيره قوي، انا هبقى مرات قبطان، انا عايزه بيت صغير كده عند الشاطئ واطفال يلعبوا حواليه. وهنا صديقي العزيز لما رجع إدموند دانتي تاني بيت والده بقى وهو فخور كده بنفسه وماشي في وسط البلد، الا ان لقى والده كان يعيش حياه من الفقر المدقع بسبب ان هو ما كانش معاه فلوس كتير قوي. طب وبعدين بدا إدموند دانتي يطلع كل الفلوس اللي معاه وبدا ان هو يقول لوالده ما تقلقش. ولكن يا صديقي دايما ما بين كل الناس اللي بتحبك بيبقى يظهر ناس بتكرهك في لحظات النجاح دايما. وظهر من ضمن الاثنين اللي بيكرهوه ظهر شخصيتين، شخصيه اسمها دانجلارز وشخصيه اسمها فرناند مونديجو. شخصية دانجلرز كانت شخصية خطيرة شوية. شخصية دانجلرز يا صديقي ده كان شخصية بالنسبة لنا هو بيكره إدموند دانتي لسبب كبير قوي. ايه هو؟ دانجلرز كان شايف ان هو احق واحد بقيادة سفينة فرعون، وكان شايف ان هو the second man to the captain، انا تاني واحد بعد القبطان وانا سني اكبر من إدموند دانتي، ازاي ولد 19 سنة يديني انا التعليمات دي؟ تعتبر اهانه ومذله. اما بالنسبه لنا كان فرناند مونديجو كان شايف ان هو كان احق واحد ان هو يحب مين؟ يحب مرسيدس، شايف ان هو بقى المفروض ان هو يعني يكسب قلبها ومفروض انها تتجوزه وتكون من نصيبه. ولكن مرسيدس كانت اختارت مين؟ كانت اختارت حد تاني خالص، واختارت مين هو؟ كانت مختاره إدموند دانتي. فالاثنين تجمعوا مع بعض، هنعمل ايه في الولد ده؟ نقتله؟ قال لك لا، الحكومه تعرف ونبدا ساعتها ان احنا نتلوث بالدم. طب نعمل ايه؟ ندمر مستقبله. اكتر حاجه تدمر المستقبل هي ان احنا نورطه في امور سياسيه. امور سياسيه فبدأ ان هم يكتبوا خطاب للبرسكيوتور اللي هو نائب المدعي العام، ويقولوا فيه ان إدموند دانتي ده متورط في حاجه خطيره جدا. ايه هي؟ كانت البلد بيحكمها لويس ال 18، وكان ساعتها كان منفي من البلد من لويس ال 18 ومن الحاشيه بتوعه كان بالنسبه لنا مين هو؟ نابليون بونابرت. فبدأوا يقولوا ان إدموند دانتي هو واحد من انصار نابليون بونابرت. وهنا صديقي كده عملوا له ازمه كبيره جدا، فاصبح إدموند دانتي قدامنا متهم ان هو واحد من انصار نابليون بونابرت، وهو في الاخر ما عملش حاجه اصلا. ولكن هم راحوا قدموا للبرسكيوتور الكلام ده وقالوا ان انت المفروض ان انتوا تقبضوا عليه. وفي يوم من الايام صديقي وفي وقت من الاوقات في يوم الفرح الجميل اللي كان مدعي كل الناس الجميله اللي كانت موجوده، الا ان الحكومه دخلت مره واحده على فرح إدموند دانتي وقالت له you are Edmond Dante you are accused انت متهم. ومن هنا هو ما كانش فاهم الاتهام ايه الاول، خدوه وقبضوا عليه ومشي. وده كان ملخص شابتر 1. يلا بينا نقرا، يلا بينا. إدموند دانتي returns to Marseille. عاد إدموند دانتي إلى ميناء مارسيليا aboard the ship فارو على متن سفينة فرعون proud and hopeful، وكان فخورا ويملأه الأمل. though only 19، ورغم أن عمره كان فقط 19 عاما. he has proven his skill by safely commanding the ship after the captain's death، ولكنه قاد السفينة بكفاءة عالية بعد موت القبطان الأساسي. his success impresses the crew، وكانت كفاءته المرتفعة لقد أبهرت جميع طاقم العمل على متن السفينة. and he looks forward to a bright future with his father and his fiancée Mercedes، وكان يتطلع إلى مستقبل مشرق مع والده وخطيبته مرسيدس. at the board، وفي الميناء، Edmond reunites joyfully with his father and Mercedes. بدأ إدموند أن يفرح مع والده ومرسيدس. منسوا موريل، السيد موريل the ship's owner، وهذا الرجل هو مالك السفينة praises Edmond and promises to make him the captain. فقد مدح إدموند في العلن ووعده أن يكون القبطان القادم للسفينة. This honor, فذلك الشرف الكبير, brings happiness and dreams of security and marriage. فقد جاء ذلك لإدموند بالكثير من السعادة وأحلام الأمان والزواج أيضا. Though Edmund soon learns his father has lived in poverty and vows to care for him. ورغم ذلك عرف إدموند واكتشف أن والده يعيش في فقر مدقع فتعهد له بالاهتمام به. While many celebrate Edmund's success, بينما كان يحتفل الكثير من الناس بنجاح إدموند, jealousy grows in the hearts of Fernand Mondego and Danglars. إلى أن قلب فرناند مونديغو ودانجلرز كان يمرأهم الغيرة والحقد. فرناند envies إدموند for winning مرسيدس. فرناند مونديغو كان يحقد على إدموند بسبب أنه قد كسب قلب مرسيدس. And Danglars resents being passed over for command. وكمان دانجلرز كان يشعر بالمرارة لتجاوزه في القيادة. Both men secretly nurture hatred toward the young sailor. وتضمر الاثنان الكراهية السرية اتجاه ذلك البحار الشاب. Danglars and Fernand met in secret, تقابلا سرا and plot Edmund's downfall. والاثنين خططوا لسقوط إدموند دانتي. Danglars write a false letter accusing Edmund of helping Napoleon's supporters. فكتب دانجلرز رسالة واتهم فيها إدموند أنه أحد أنصار نابليون بونابرت. A serious crime, وهي تهمة خطيرة. Fernand delivers the letter to the authorities. وقام فرناند بتوصيل ذلك الخطاب للسلطات المعنية. Believing Edmund's arrest will remove him forever. وكانوا يؤمنون أن اعتقال إدموند دانتي سيقضي عليه نهائيا. During Edmond Dante and Mercedes Joyful's engagement celebration, أثناء احتفال خطوبة إدموند دانتي ومرسيدس في الملأ وكان يعمهم الفرح, soldiers arrived. فقد وصل الجنود and arrest Edmond Dante without explanation. وقبضوا على إدموند دانتي بدون أي تفسير. His happiness collapses instantly as he is taken away. ولكن كانت فرحته قد انتهت وقد دمرت على الفور بعد أن أخذ بعيدا. Innocent and confused. فكان بريئا وكان يشعر بالارتباك. While his loved ones are left in despair. بينما تركه أحباءه في يأس. Thus his promising future turns suddenly dark. وهكذا يتحول مستقبله الواعد فجأة إلى ظلام حالك.
Edmond Dantes stood proudly at the front of the ship Pharaon as it entered the port of Marseille.
The wind pushed the sails, the sea sparkled in the sunlight, and sailors hurried across the deck.
For Edmond, this was not just another journey. It was the beginning of a new life. He was only 19 years old, but already the first mate of one of the finest ships of his company. His heart was full of hope and dreams, for he carried good news for both his employer and his family. The Pharaon had sailed from Smyrna, then stopped in Naples, and was finally returning to Marseille. On the voyage, the ship's captain had fallen gravely ill.
Edmond, young and ambitious, had taken command.
All hands ready. We hold course for Marseille.
He navigated storms, negotiated with traders, and brought the ship safely home with its cargo untouched. His skill and bravery impressed everyone on board. Even the old sailors, who at first had doubted him, now spoke of him with respect. As the ship neared the dock, A small crowd gathered to welcome it. Merchants, port workers, and families waited impatiently. Edmund felt his heart beat faster, for among the crowd stood the two people he loved most.
His father, an old man who had given everything for his son.
And Mercedes, the beautiful young woman who was promised to him.
The ship anchored, and Edmund gave sharp, confident orders.
Lower the sails. Prepare the ropes. Secure the cargo.
And the sailors obeyed with speed.
When the gangplank was lowered, Edmond ran down, eager to embrace his father and Mercedes.
His father held him tightly, tears in his eyes.
Mercedes smiled, her dark hair shining in the sunlight, her eyes full of love.
Edmund, she whispered, you are safe. I prayed for you every day.
I am safe, and more than that, I bring good news.
The captain has died, but the owner, Monsieur Morel, has promised to make me captain of the Pharaon. 19! I shall have my own command!
His father's hands trembled as he held him. Captain, my son, you make me proud.
Mercedes lowered her eyes modestly, though joy filled her heart. To be the wife of a captain meant security and honor. She dreamed of a small home near the sea, children playing by the shore, and a future bright with happiness.
You have shown courage and wisdom beyond your years. The Pharaon is yours to command, Edmund. Serve me faithfully, and you shall rise even higher.
The crowd cheered, and Edmund felt as if the whole world celebrated with him.
Yet, while most smiled, not every face was full of joy. Hidden among the crowd was Fernand Mondego, a fisherman from Catalonia. He stood silently, his fists clenched, his eyes burning with jealousy. For Fernand loved Mercedes too, and he had long dreamed of marrying her. But she had chosen Edmund, and Fernand's heart was filled with anger and envy. Another man, Danglars, the ship's purser, also looked at Edmund with bitterness. During the voyage, Edmund had been promoted above him, and Danglars could not forgive this humiliation.
To see a 19-year-old boy given the command of the Pharaon was, for him, an insult.
His lips curled into a thin smile as he muttered to himself, "Captain Dante, we shall see how long that lasts." Unaware of the hatred growing around him, Edmond walked proudly through the streets of Marseille with his father and Mercedes at his side. They visited his father's small home, where Edmond discovered a painful truth. His father had lived in poverty while he was away. Out of duty, the old man had repaid a debt of money that Edmond owed to a neighbor, leaving himself almost nothing to eat.
Edmund was heartbroken, but he quickly gave his father all the wages he had earned.
From now on, you will want for nothing.
The evening brought more joy. Edmond and Mercedes walked along the shore, speaking of their future. The sea breeze touched their faces, and the horizon seemed to promise endless possibilities. They planned to marry as soon as possible. Mercedes leaned on Edmund's arm and whispered,
My love, we will be together forever.
I wish this happiness could last forever.
It will.
Nothing can take it from us.
But fate had other plans.
While Edmund celebrated, Danglars and Fernand met secretly in a dark tavern. They spoke in low voices, their words heavy with malice.
Edmund has everything. Mercedes, success, the captaincy. While I, who has loved her since childhood, am left with nothing. And I, said Danglars, should be purser, second only to the captain. Instead, this boy takes the command, and I am forced to serve under him. His good fortune is insufferable. The two men drank coffee, their eyes filled with hatred. It was then that Danglars suggested a plan. What if Edmund were accused of being a traitor? What if someone wrote a letter to the authorities claiming he carries messages from Napoleon's supporters?
If he is arrested, he will lose Mercedes. She will be mine.
Exactly, and I shall have my revenge. He will never be captain if he is in prison.
That night, with careful handwriting, Danglars composed a letter.
It accused Edmond Dantès of carrying a secret letter from Napoleon Bonaparte to his followers in Paris.
The accusation was false, but it was dangerous. The government feared Napoleon, who had been exiled but still had many loyal supporters.
To be suspected of helping him was enough to destroy a man's life. When the letter was finished, Fernand delivered it to the local prosecutor. With that single act, Edmund's future was poisoned.
The next day, Edmund's friends gathered for his betrothal feast. Laughter filled the air, music played,
And tables were heavy with food and drinks. Mercedes wore a simple white dress, her face glowing with happiness. Cheers answered him, and for a moment, all seemed perfect. But outside, in the shadows, soldiers approached. At the height of the celebration, the door opened, and an officer entered with cold authority. Edmond Dantès?
Yes.
You are under arrest by order of the king's prosecutor. The room fell silent. Mercedes gasped, Edmond's father trembled, and Edmond himself stood frozen with shock. He had done nothing wrong, yet strong hands seized him and led him away.
يلا صديقي نقرأ مع بعض chapter 2 اللي بيتكلم عن treacherous plot مؤامرة الغدر والخيانة. تعالوا نلخصها الأول قبل ما نبدأ نقرأ كلمات أو نبدأ نقرأ النص أصلا. إيه اللي حصل بعد ما قبضوا عليه في يوم فرحه؟ هنا صديقي هيوصل هناك لحد اسمه ديفل 4 وده هيكون المدعي العام. حد كده صديقي في الهيئة اللي هي الحكومية، الناس اللي هي زي وكيل نيابة كده، تمام كده؟ ده اللي بيقعد يقاضي الناس وانت ايه اللي عملته والكلام ده كله، ويبدا ان هو يحاكمه. فبدا فعلا وكيل النيابه اللي هو بالنسبه لنا اسمه ديفل 4 ده بدا ان هو يحاكم ادموند دانتي وقال له انت متهم انك انت تحمل خطاب. ده حصل؟ قال له حصل. ايه لا؟ قال له انت بتعترف بسهوله، انت فعلا بتعترف انك كنت احمل خطاب؟ قال له انا فعلا كنت احمل خطاب من الداين كابتن، من القبطان بتاعي قبل ما يموت. قال له طب وعارف محتواه ايه؟ قال له لا. قال له انت متهم بالخيانه. خيانه ايه؟ انت لسه متجوز امبارح. قال له لا، خيانه الدوله. انت متهم بخيانه الدوله انك انت واحد من انصار نابليون بونابرت. فقال له هنا انا ما كنتش اعرف الا محتوى الخطاب ده كان بيتكلم عن ايه بالظبط، ولو كنت اعرف انا كنت حرقته. اكيد انا مش متهم بحاجه. I'm just a sailor, I'm not a politician. انا مجرد بحار، انا مش راجل سياسه. وهنا صديقي العزيز بدأ ديفل 4 يبص في الخطاب كده وبيفتحه، وكانت الصدمة. ديفل 4 لقى ان اسم والده مذكور في الخطاب ده كواحد من انصار نابليون بونابرت. وهنا كانت مشكلة. ايه المشكلة الكبيرة دي؟ ان هنا صديقي ديفل 4 قدامه حاجه من الاثنين، يا اما كان هو عارف ببراءه ادموند دانتي فيبرئه، فساعتها يبقى المتهم الاول والاخير قدام الهيئه القضائيه اللي هو والده والد ديفل 4، ودي كانت هتبقى مشكله كبيره جدا، لان ساعتها ما ينفعش يكون حد سياسي كده وليه اراء سياسيه رخمه ضد الدوله ويكون في نفس الوقت قاضي، فهيتحرم من وظيفته، في نفس الوقت اسم العائله هيهدم. فما قداموش غير حل واحد، ان هو يبدا يلبس ادموند دانتي ويحرق الخطاب المزيف ده. وبالفعل ده اللي حصل. ايه اللي حصل يا مستر؟ بدأ ان هو قال له ادموند دانتي، انا بسألك المره الثانيه، انت كنت تحمل خطاب؟ قال له كنت بحمل خطاب. فقال بس اكتب عندك يا ابني كان يحمل خطاب. وبدا قال له طب بس انا مش متهم. قال له خلاص انت اعترفت قدام الهيئه القضائيه انك انت كنت احمل خطاب. وبدا دي في الفور سرا كده قام حرق الخطاب ده عشان يزيل دليل الادانه الوحيد اللي ممكن يدين والده. وبدا ان يبقى المتهم الاول والاخير هو يبقى بالنسبه لنا ادموند دانتي. طب يبقى كده دي في الفور كان عارف ببراءته ولكن اتسجن. ايوه وده اللي نعرفه في تشابتر 2. يلا بينا نقرا الكلمات. يلا بينا. astonishment, cling, collapse, condemn, determination, disbelief, drown, exiled, fortress, garment, grief, infamous, integration, better, cloud, rumor, bound, politician, scheme, seal, shackled, sincerity, treason, treacherous, unshaken, mourning, pale, plead, plotting, realist, ruin, sacrifice, rival, pierce, despair, study, vanish, sell. Chapter 2. Edmond Dante's joyful betrothal ends in shock. انتهت خطوبة إدموند دانتي المليئة بالفرح بصدمة عارمة when he is arrested and taken away. فعندما اعتقل واقتاد بعيدا. Mercedes and Edmund's father are devastated. فكانت مرسيدس ووالد أودمان يتجادلان سويا but believe in his innocence. ولكن كانوا يؤمنان ببراءته. while Danglars بينما كان Danglars and Fernand secretly celebrate بينما كانوا يحتفلان سرا. The success of their cruel plan كانوا يحتفلان سرا بنجاح المخطط القاسي لديهما. The false letter الخطاب المزيف accusing Edmond of helping Napoleon reaches Gare de Villefort الذي وصل إلى Gare de Villefort the ambitious deputy prosecutor وهو نائب المدعي الطموح fearing Bonaparte's threats to the king. وكان يخشى ويخاف أي تهديد بونابرتي إلى الملك. Villefort orders Edmond's integration. طلب إدموند في استجواب. Seeing the case وكان ينظر إلى القضية dangerous and politically sensitive. كان يرى أن تلك قضية خطيرة وحساسة للغاية. During the integration فأثناء ذلك الاستجواب Edmond honestly admits carrying a letter but insists he never knew its contents. فاعترف أودمان دانتي أنه كان يحمل خطابا ولكن لم يكن يعرف ما بداخله. Villefort discovers the letter is addressed to his own father. فكان Villefort يعرف أن الرسالة موجهة إلى والده بنفسه. Upon Bonaparte's and realizes the revealing the truth will destroy his career and reputation. فكان يدرك أن كشف تلك الحقيقة ستدمر المستقبل والسمعة. Though convinced Odman's innocence رغم اقتناعه ببراءة إدموند دانتي. Villefort sacrifices him to protect himself. ضحى Villefort به من أجل أن يحمي نفسه. He condemns Edmond as a traitor. فكان يتعامل مع إدموند وكأنه خائن. Orders his imprisonment in the Chateau d'If. فقد أمر أن يسجن في سجن شاتو ديف. And secretly burns the letter to erase evidence of his father's guilt. وقام بحرق ذلك الدليل ليمحو أي ذنب على والده. Edmond is taken to the Drizzt Chateau d'If. انتقل أودموند إلى قلعة شاتو ديف المرعبة. Leaving behind his dreams. فطرق من ورائه الأحلام. His father والدي and Mercedes ومرسيدس. In Marseille, Mercedes remained faithful and waits for him. كانت تنتظره. Fernand and Danglars believe they have won. فقد اقتنعا أنهم قد فازوا. Unaware that Edmund's spirit and love still endure. فكانوا غير مدركين أن إدموند وروحه وحبه ما زالوا أحياء.
There must be a mistake. Edmund is innocent.
The feast ended in confusion and sorrow.
But her words were useless. The trap had closed, and Edmund's bright future was already slipping into darkness.
The celebration of Edmond Dantes' betrothal had ended in shock and silence. The music had stopped, the sweets had turned bitter in the mouths of the guests, and Mercedes's white dress, once a symbol of joy, now seemed like a garment of mourning. Edmond had been taken away by soldiers, accused of crimes he did not even understand.
They cannot keep him. Edmond is innocent. Everyone knows it.
Yes, child, but envy is a cruel enemy. I fear something dark has been planned.
Indeed, outside the walls of their humble home, two men congratulated themselves in secret.
Danglars and Fernand. They had succeeded in their scheme, and now they waited for the storm to destroy their rival.
The false letter, written by Danglars and delivered by Fernand, had been placed into the hands of Gérard de Villefort, the deputy prosecutor of Marseille. Villefort was a young man of ambition, eager to rise in government.
He read the accusation carefully. Edmond Dantes, sailor of the ship Pharaon, carries a letter from Napoleon Bonaparte to his supporters in Paris.
At once, Villefort's face darkened. Though many such letters had been rumored, this one carried danger.
The country was ruled by King Louis VIII, restored to the throne after Napoleon's defeat.
Any hint of Bonapartist activity was treated as treason. To protect the king, men had been executed for far less. Bring this Edmond Dantes before me. We shall see what truth lies behind his smile. Edmond was taken into a cold, stone room. His hands were bound, but his spirit was unbroken. He stood tall before the deputy prosecutor, confused but not afraid. Monsieur Dantes, you are accused of carrying a letter from the exiled Emperor Napoleon to his supporters in Paris. What say you?
A letter? Yes. I was given a letter on the island of Elba by the dying captain of my ship.
Do you know to whom this letter was addressed?
No, monsieur. I only know it was to be delivered in Paris. I wished only to keep my word to my captain. I am a sailor, not a politician. The sincerity in Edmond's voice would have touched any fair-hearted judge. But Villefort's ambition clouded his sense of justice. For when he broke the seal and read the letter, he discovered a terrible truth.
It was addressed to a Bonapartist leader, his own father.
If the letter became public, Villefort's family name would be ruined and his career destroyed.
His heart pounded as he faced the young sailor. You admit to carrying this letter?
Yes, but I swear to you I had no idea of its contents. I would gladly burn it if it causes harm. Villefort studied Edmond for a long moment. He saw the honesty, the innocence, the youth. Part of him longed to release the boy and clear his name, but his ambition refused.
Edmond Dantes, you have confessed to carrying a letter from the enemy of the king.
For this, you are guilty of treason. Guards, take him to the Château d'If.
No! I am innocent! Please, listen to me, God!
But his words were drowned by the clanging of the prison doors.
When the news spread that Edmond had been imprisoned, shock and disbelief filled Marseille. Mercédès refused to believe it.
She went from door to door, pleading with officials, crying out that Edmond was no traitor. He knows only ships, sails, and the sea.
The government was afraid of Napoleon's return.
And in their eyes, any man accused of serving him was already guilty.
Edmond's father grew weaker with grief. He had only his son in the world, and now even that comfort had been torn from him. He sat for hours by the window, staring at the sea, whispering Edmund's name. Meanwhile, Danglars and Fernand celebrated quietly. Danglars smiled to himself, imagining the Pharian under his influence now, that Edmund was gone. Fernand, though, cared only for Mercedes. He visited her daily, pretending to comfort her, but secretly hoping her despair would push her into his arms. Yet each time, Mercedes turned away, her loyalty to Edmund unshaken.
I will wait for him. If he is in prison for 100 years, still I will wait.
Her words cut Fernand's heart like a knife. Late at night, Villefort sat in his study, the letter spread before him. His hands shook as he read his father's name once again. If the king discovered that Gérard de Villefort's father was a traitor, all his dreams of power would collapse. His fiancée's family was royalist. His own career depended on loyalty to the crown. Everything he had worked for could vanish in an instant.
I must destroy this letter. Then he whispered, "Farewell, Edmond Dantès. You are sacrificed for my future."
At dawn, soldiers dragged Edmund from his cell. Shackled and pale, he was pushed into a small boat
that carried him across the waters of Marseille.
He looked desperately at the city. The port where he had dreamed of being captain. The house where his father waited.
the streets where he had walked with Mercedes. Every sight pierced his heart like a blade.
Where are you taking me? To the Château d'If. Edmund's blood turned cold. The Château d'If was a fortress prison built on a rocky island.
Infamous for housing traitors and prisoners, few who entered its gates ever returned.
As the boat approached the dark stone walls rising from the sea, Edmund's spirit sank.
He stretched out his hands toward the city, shouting, "Mercedes! Father! Help me!"
But no voice answered, only the crash of the waves against the rocks. As the iron doors shut, he felt the world of freedom and love slip away, leaving only hollow pain within him.
Back in Marseille, Fernand and Danglars exchanged satisfied glances.
Dantès is gone. The sea has swallowed him, though he lives still.
Fernand nodded, his eyes fixed on Mercedes from a distance. His spirit lived on in the heart of Mercedes. And now she will be mine, and no chains could break that bond.
Chapter 3. بس قبل ما ابدا خليني احكي لك بسرعه كده حكايه سريعه. صديقي العزيز، في تشابتر 3 بعد ما خلاص إدموند اتحكم عليه ان هو يروح سجن شاتو ديف، وفعلا هو راح السجن ده وبدأ والده يموت بالبطيء بسبب ان هو جوه وهو بره. هنا صديقي إدموند دانتي كان فاكر ان ما كانش حد هيسيبه، وقال ان مسيو موريل ده راجل مهم جدا واكيد هيبقى ليه دور. حتى مرسيدس هتمشي على كل بيت وتتوسل ليه لحد ما يطلعوني من المكان اللي انا فيه ده. ممكن كمان دي فيلفور يرجع عن قراراته الغلط اللي هو عملها، ولكن للاسف مر اليوم كالاسبوع والاسبوع كالشهر، لحد ما والد إدموند دانتي بدأ ان هو ما ياكلش وبدأ ان هو يرجع للجوع المدقع تاني. ويا صديقي للاسف مات والد إدموند دانتي. طب وإدموند دانتي فضل في السجن وهو عمال يقول انا بريء انا بريء، وحتى السجانه كانوا بيرد عليه رد اللي هو يعني انت بريء امال ايه اللي جابك هنا. وهنا صديقي كمان مرسيدس قعدت تتعرض للتنمر من بعض الناس وانتشرت الاخبار. في المدينه، وقعد فعلا الناس تضيف اللي عارف انت البنزين جنب النار. قعد يقول له اكيد بقى إدموند دانتي ده اكيد جاله فرصه مهمه، واكيد طلع في الاخر وراه ملعوب، يبقى اكيد طلع الراجل ده مش سهل. وللاسف انتشرت بعض الاخبار السيئه، وبدا يحارب عشانها الناس الكويسه اللي هو كانت مرسيدس وكان مسيو موريل وكان والده، لحد ما مات والده بره السجن. وهنا يا صديقي بدا ان إدموند دانتي يفقد الامل من داخل السجن. يلا بينا نقرا الكلمات وبعد كده نقرا النص. abundant, accuse, accusation, beg, betrayal, betrothal, charity, conspiracy, condemn, criminal, death, disbelief, feint, fortress, proof, treason. His frail heart gave out. Swear, tavern, pity, official, مسؤول حكومي, gaze, laughter, loyalty, mercy, nightmare, nightmare, patterns, blood, promise, pure, rejoice, rewards, suffer, waste, stab, rot, torture. يلا بينا نقرأ مع بعض ملخص chapter 3. The light of Edmond Dante's arrest turns his joyful betrothal into a lasting nightmare. تحولت ليلة اعتقال إدموند دانتي من أسعد لحظات خطوبته إلى كابوس لا ينسى. Taken away like a criminal. أخذ بعيدا وكأنه مجرما. He is haunted by the terrified faces. His father and Mercedes. وكان إدموند دانتي ظلت وجوه والده ومرسيدس المليئة بالخوف تطارده. As he sat alone in his cold prison cell. وكان يجلس في غرفته التي كانت يملأها البرد. Unable to understand his fate. كان عاجزا عن فهم المصير. Edmond's downfall began with betrayal. بدأ سقوط إدموند دانتي بالخيانة. Danglars and Fernand secretly wrote a false letter accusing him of treason. فبدأ سقوط إدموند دانتي بالخيانة وبكتابة دانجلر وفرناند سرا الرسالة الكاذبة الذين اتهموه بالخيانة. Twisting his loyal act of carrying a letter for his dying captain into a dangerous evidence against him. وتحول الدليل الذي كان دليل براءته إلى دليل إدانة ضده. Unaware of this plot, Edmond walked straight into the trap. ولم يكن إدموند يعلم أنه كان يجري نحو الفخ. During his integration, أثناء الاستجواب, Edmond speaks honestly to Villefort. كان يتحدث إدموند مع Villefort, admitting he carried the letter but denying any knowledge of its content. فكان يعترف بحمل الرسالة لكنه ينفي ما يعرفه من محتواه. Villefort torn between justice and ambition. فكان Villefort ما بين العدل وما بين الطموح. Burns the letter to protect himself and condemns Edmond as a traitor despite knowing his innocent. ولكن بدأ خلاص بقى إن هو يتجه نحو الطموح، فحرق الخطاب السري ده عشان يحمي نفسه، كأن والده كان هيكون المتهم الوحيد، فحمى والده بقى وأصبح من المتهم الوحيد هو إدموند دانتي. As Edmond is sent to the Chateau d'If, Marsilia reacts with rumors and doubt. امتلأ المكان بالإشاعات والشكوك. Mercedes, Edmond's father, and Monsieur Morel fight desperately to defend him. حاولوا أن يدافعوا عنه. While Danglars and Fernand quietly rejoice. بينما كان Danglars وفرناند كانوا يستمتعان, each hoping to profit from Edmond's ruin. طامعين في الاستفادة القصوى من سقوطه. In prison, وهو في السجن, Edmond's hope slowly dies and days turns into months of isolation and despair. في السجن تموت الآمال إدموند ببطء شديد، وتحولت الأيام إلى شهور من العزلة واليأس. Meanwhile, his father, weakened by grief and poverty, dies alone in Marseille. توفى والده منعزلا وحيدا. Whispering Edmond's name, كان ينادي باسم Edmond, and unseen tragedy caused by betrayal and justice. وكان يعلم أن المأساة خفية سببها الخيانة والظلم.
But deep in his heart, he knew the truth, though Edmond was imprisoned.
The night of Edmond Dantès' arrest remained etched in the memory of all who had gathered to celebrate his betrothal.
What should have been the happiest evening of his young life had become a nightmare.
The music had stopped, the laughter had died, and soldiers had led him away as though he were a criminal.
The faces of his father and Mercedes, full of terror and disbelief, haunted him.
As he sat alone in his cold prison cell.
Long before the soldiers had arrived, betrayal had already taken root.
Danglars, the purser of the Pharaon, and Fernand, the jealous fisherman who desired Mercedes, had finished their treacherous letter of denunciation.
Together they accused Edmond of being a traitor, secretly plotting against the country. They had written with clever words, just enough truth to make the lie seem real.
Edmond had indeed received a letter on the island of Elba, and he had promised his dying captain to deliver it.
That innocent act of loyalty became twisted into proof of treason.
When the soldiers entered the feast, Edmond had no idea of the invisible web already closing around him.
I am loyal to the king. I have never spoken with enemies. I am a sailor, monsieur, nothing more. I only carried out the final wish of my captain.
Villefort, however, was torn between duty and ambition. In his hand lay the very letter that condemned not only Edmond but also Villefort's own father. If the letter were revealed, his career would collapse, his future destroyed.
You admit to carrying this letter?
Yes, but I did not know what it contained. I swear it, monsieur.
Villefort burned the letter in secret, protecting himself, but condemned Edmond aloud. By your own confession, you carried a message from the enemy of the king. That is treason.
But I am innocent. Perhaps. But the law does not ask for innocence. It asks for proof. And the proof condemns you.
Back in Marseille, word spread quickly that Edmond had been taken to the Château d'If.
People whispered his name in markets and taverns. Some pitied him, but others shrugged, saying, "Where there is smoke, there is fire." Only those who truly loved him, his father, Mercedes, and Monsieur Morel, refused to believe the accusations.
Edmond is no traitor. His only love is the sea.
But her words met closed doors and deaf ears. No one dared question the orders of the prosecutor.
I swear, Edmond Dantès is a loyal and honorable man.
Yet even his respected voice carried no weight against the written denunciation.
While the innocent fought for Edmond, his enemies quietly rejoiced.
Danglars, relieved to see the young sailor removed from command, already dreamed of power within the company.
With Dantès gone, I can shape the future of the Pharaon as I please.
Belling?
Fernand, meanwhile, turned his eyes to Mercedes. He visited her often, pretending to be her comfort.
I know you suffer.
But Edmond is gone. They will not free him. You must not waste your youth in waiting.
I belong to Edmond. Until the day he returns, I will not listen to another.
Her loyalty stabbed Fernand with pain, but also fed his anger.
Then let him rot in the Château d'If. One day you will have no choice but to turn to me. In the Château d'If, Edmond experienced the slow death of hope.
The prison was a fortress of stone, standing on a lonely island,
its windows barred and its corridors damp with sea air.
There is a mistake. I am innocent. All here say the same, young man. Yet they remain.
Edmund was dragged through a long corridor lit only by torches. The smell of salt and mildew clung to the air. Guards mocked him as they pushed him into a narrow cell with a straw bed, a broken jug for water, and walls damp with cold.
This is your palace, Captain.
The word captain, once a promise of honor, now sounded like an insult. He collapsed on the straw, covering his face with his hands. In a single day, he had lost his freedom, his father, his love, and his future. He cried out to the heavens, "Why am I here? What crime have I committed?" But the stones gave no answer. Days passed into weeks, weeks into months. Edmund's youthful energy drained away. He counted the stones in his cell, traced patterns in the cracks of the wall, and listened endlessly to the sea pounding against the rocks outside. At times he shouted his innocence into the darkness, but no one listened. His only visitors were the guards who brought him bread and water. Back in Marseille, Edmond's father grew weaker each day. Without his son's support, the old man fell into poverty and despair. He refused food, his only comfort the memory of Edmund's voice.
I tried to save him. But sometimes, grief is stronger than charity.
Your son is innocent. I swear to you, I will not abandon him.
Tell my Edmund that I loved him.
Soon after, his frail heart gave out, and he died alone, whispering his son's name.
For Mercedes, each day with Edmond was torture. She waited at the shore, gazing at the island prison across the water, as if her eyes could pierce the walls and reach him. She prayed constantly for his return, refusing every suggestion that she should forget him.
Her beauty and loyalty only increased Fernand's obsession. He promised himself that if Edmund never returned,
Mercedes would one day be his, no matter the cost.
Meanwhile, Gérard de Villefort enjoyed the rewards of his betrayal. By sending Edmund to prison and destroying the letter, he had secured his position with the royalists. He was praised for his vigilance, promoted for his loyalty, and prepared for marriage into a powerful family. Yet sometimes, late at night, he dreamed of Edmund's face, honest, confused, and pleading.
تعالى صديقي بقى نبص على chapter 4. chapter 4 يا صديقي قبل ما نبدأ نقرأ أي حاجة عنه تعالى نعرف نفتكر كده أحداثه إيه اللي حصل فيه. اللي حصل يا صديقي إن كان إدموند دونتي كان خلاص بيفكر في الانتحار وإن هو يقتل نفسه. ولكن يا صديقي فجأة سمع صوت خروشة. الخروشة دي جاية منين؟ بعد كده بدأ يحط ودنه كده على الفلور أرضية المكان لحد ما بدأ سمع صوت حد بيحفر. بدأ إدموند دونتي يساعد هو كمان في الحفر من ناحية الصوت ده لحد ما قابل أبي فريا. وده كان يا فندم بالنسبة لنا هو قصة اسمه فريا. الراجل ده كان سكولر، كان عالم، عنده علم في الماثماتكس، في علم الرياضة، في الجيوغرافي، وكان عنده علم كمان في الساينس والهيستوري، في التاريخ، في العلوم. كان راجل ده بوليتيشن، كان راجل سياسي. بدأ يا صديقي أول ما بدأ الحفرة تبان وبدأ يظهر وشه، أما قال له هو ار يو؟ أنت مين؟ قال له أما بي فريا، أنا الآب فريا. قال له I'm a prisoner like you، أنا سجين زيك بالظبط هنا. وبدأ يا صديقي إن إدموند دونتي حس إن هو مش لوحده، وبدأت إن هو حس إن هو ريبورن، الروح رجعت له مرة تانية، وبدأ إن هو يسلم عليه، وبدأوا إن هم يوسعوا الحفرة ما بينهم بدون ما يعلم حد من الجنود بره حاجة، لحس إن هم يروحوا لبعض كل يوم من زنزانة للأخرى. بدأ بيفري قال له ده أنا أسأت الحسبة للأسف، أنا كنت كل ده بحفر بقالي سنين عشان أخرج بره السجن خالص، للأسف الحظ جابني عندك، ولكن أنا كسبت صديق هنا جديد. قال له خلاص طالما إحنا مش عارفين نعيش بحرية تعال اعلمك يا ادموند دانتي وهديك حاجه مهمه جدا. قال له ايه هي؟ قال له هديك المعرفه. وبدا هنا فعلا اتعلم منه كتير جدا. قال له ده انا كنت جاي لك هنا بلوتيشن، انا كنت جاي لك هنا مجرد حد انا كنت جاي لك هنا سيلور، كنت جاي لك بحار، بس انا هخرج من هنا سكولر، هخرج من هنا عالم كبير جدا. ومن هنا صديقي بدا حس أبيفرية بتعب. أما قال له إدموند دانتي أنا هقول لك على سر. قال له إيه هو؟ قال له إحنا عاينين كنز موجود في مونte كريستو، في جزيرة مونte كريستو، ودي الجزيرة اللي مكتوب بيها القصة يا صديقي. ومن هنا حل إدموند هيتقلب تماما. يلا بينا نقرأ الكلمات وبعد كده نقرأ النص. أبي artifacts assure owe blend companion conceal confess clasp cruel deliberate disciplined prisoner, reborn, resume, reveal, rhythm, escape, fate, faint, fortune, gratitude, knowledge, leap, miscalculate, patiently, بصبر, scholar, scratching, stale, strategy, suffer, يعاني, surround, tap, يضرب بخفة, treasure, كنز, tunnel, نفق, violent, wisely, defy, legend, no, يقطم يعني intelligence الذكاء. يلا بينا. The Chateau d'If is described as a dark. توصف قلعة شاتو ديف كحصن مظلم. hopeless, fortress in middle of the sea. فكان ذلك الحصن اليائس في قلب البحر. For Edmond Dante, أما بالنسبة لإدموند دانتي, it becomes a world, أصبح عالمه of silence and despair, من الصمت واليأس, where time loses meaning, حيث يفقد الوقت معناه, and hope slowly fades as days and months passes without rescue. فكانت الآمال تذبل مع مرور الأيام والوقت دون أي إنقاذ. Loneliness, hunger, and cruelty from the gratitude push Edmond toward despair, and thoughts of death يدفع الجوع والوحدة وسخرية الحراس إدموند إلى اليأس وأفكار الموت. Just as his spirit is breaking, وبينما كانت روحه تنكسر, he hears, قد سمع, mysterious digging sound, صوت حفر. Realizing another prisoner is nearby, فكان يعلم أن سجينا آخر بالقرب منه. And for the first time in a long while, hope returns, فقد عاد الأمل من جديد. Edmond discovers the digger is Epipharia. اكتشف إدموند أن الحافر هو الأبيفريا. An intelligent and wise prisoner, كان سجينا ذكيا وكان حكيم. Their meeting gives Edmond new lives. فبدأ الاجتماع أن يعطي إدموند آمالا جديدة. And the Epee explains his imprisonment and teaches Edmond that true freedom lies in his mind. فبدأ أن يعلم إدموند الحرية الكاملة التي كانت تكمن في عقله. Not just the body. أن العقل هو من يمتلك الحرية، ليس فقط الجسد. Epipharia becomes Edmond's teacher. أصبح الأبيفريا هو معلم إدموند. Turning the prison into school. فتحول السجن إلى مدرسة. He teaches Edmond languages. فقد علمه اللغات, science, العلوم, history, التاريخ, and philosophy, والفلسفة. Transforming him from a simple sailor into a disciplined and educated man with a powerful mind. فتحول إلى رجل مثقف ومنضبط يمتلك عقلا قويا. The Epee reveals the secret of great treasures hidden on the island of Monte Cristo and entrusts Edmond with the map before failing seriously ill. بدأ إن هو يكتشف السر العظيم إنه كان مخبي كنز في جزيرة مونte كريستو. وده يسلم إدموند كمان الخريطة قبل أن يشتد إليه المرض. This knowledge gives Edmond a vision of the future and power to change his fate. فبدأ إن يبقى فيه قوة إن هو يغير من مصيره. Even as he fears losing his only friend. رغم خوفه من فقدان صديقه الوحيد.
The Chateau d'If stored like a dark sentinel in the middle of the sea.
Its heavy walls rose from the rocks, defying both waves and storms.
where prisoners disappeared into silence and rarely returned.
For Edmond Dantes, this fortress became his world. The iron gates had swallowed him, and now only damp stone and the sound of the sea surrounded him. Time lost its meaning inside the prison.
Day and night blended together, marked only by the arrival of stale bread and dirty water.
Edmund counted the stones in his cell, traced the cracks with his fingers, and tried to measure time by the thin ray of light.
At first, he dreamed of rescue.
He imagined that Monsieur Morel would save him.
That Mercedes would plead for him.
That Villefort would confess his mistake.
You know.
But weeks turned into months, and no one came.
The silence of the prison began to crush his spirit.
Sometimes they answered with cruel jokes.
Yes! Yes! Everyone here is innocent!
Hunger gnawed at him, loneliness consumed him, and despair whispered dark thoughts into his ear.
Perhaps it is better to die, he told himself. He considered starving himself, ending his pain.
One evening, as Edmund lay in hopeless silence, he heard it again, a faint,
a strange sound.
Steady scratching sound.
It seemed to come from beneath the floor, like claws against stone. At first, he thought it was rats, but the rhythm was too deliberate.
His heart leaped. He tapped lightly on the stone with a piece of broken jug.
The scratching stopped, then resumed more quickly, as if in answer.
Edmund cried out with joy. He was not alone. From that moment, hope returned to his soul.
Night after night, Edmund listened to the mysterious digging.
Slowly, patiently, he began to loosen the stones in his own cell to help.
He tore at the walls with his bare hands, using iron nails from his bed as tools.
His fingers bled, but he felt alive again.
After weeks of effort, a small tunnel opened.
And through the dust and darkness, Edmund saw another human face.
It was lined with age and wisdom, the eyes bright with intelligence.
Who are you? Edmund whispered.
I am Abbé Faria, a prisoner like you, replied in a low voice.
The two men reached out their hands and clasped them tightly. In that moment, Edmund felt reborn. The old man explained how he had spent years trying to dig an escape tunnel. He had miscalculated and arrived at Edmund's cell instead of the outer wall.
Yet he did not regret it, for now he had a companion.
Abbé Faria had been imprisoned for political reasons. He had served princes, kings, and ministers. But his intelligence
made him dangerous to powerful enemies.
Yet instead of losing hope, the priest had turned his prison into a school. He had written books in his memory, solved problems
in his head, and taught himself new sciences by sheer thought.
You see, my son, he told Edmund, a man may lose his freedom, but he must never lose his mind. That is the true prison. Edmund listened with awe. He had been a sailor, skilled at reading the winds and the waves, but untrained in books. Edmund listened with awe. He had been a sailor, skilled at reading the winds and the waves, but untrained in books. Now, locked in darkness, he found a teacher who could open doors in his mind wider than the ocean itself.
Edmund's heart filled with gratitude.
I thought I would die alone. You have saved me.
The Abbé smiled kindly. No, my son. Perhaps it is you who will save me.
Day after day, the two prisoners widened the passage, crawling through to spend hours together.
The guards suspected nothing, for Edmund and the Abbé were careful to hide their work.
More than freedom, Abbé Faria gave Edmund something greater: knowledge.
The old man was a priest and a scholar, fluent in languages, skilled in mathematics, history, and philosophy.
He had studied politics, science, and human nature, and the islands of the prison.
Since we cannot live free, the Abbé said, let us at least live usefully.
So Edmund became his student. He learned Italian, English, and even some Arabic.
He studied history and geography, science and strategy.
Once simple and youthful, grew sharp and disciplined. I entered this prison a sailor, Edmund thought, but I will leave it a scholar.
One night, as the two men whispered in the tunnel, the Abbé grew serious. There is something more, Edmund. Something I have never told another soul.
He revealed the story of a vast treasure hidden on the island of Monte Cristo.
At first, Edmund thought it was a dream. Such a fortune cannot be real. The Abbé smiled. I assure you, it is real. And if ever you escape this prison, the treasure shall be yours. Promise me that you will use it wisely, not for greed, but for justice.
For the first time since his arrest, he saw a future, not as a broken prisoner, but as a man with power to change his fate.
The Abbé suffered from terrible seizures, violent fits that shook his body and left him weak for days.
He knew his time was short. My dear Edmund, if I die before we escape, the secret of the treasure is yours. Here, I have drawn the map. Take it. Remember Monte Cristo. No, Father, you will live. Together we shall escape. But in his heart he feared otherwise.
صديقي العزيز، بعد ما شفنا الفور تشابترز طالما وصلت لهنا، اولا حابين نشكر المدرس الجميل اللي احنا واخدين منه الفيديو، موجود على اليوتيوب، حد محترم جدا جدا جدا، بارك الله فيه وفي علمه. ويا صديقي العزيز، حابين اقول لك ان احنا كمان بعد ما تكون شفت الفور تشابترز اتفرج عليهم كويس جدا، احفظ الكلمات. ان شاء الله هنسيب لك كده ملف يكون فيه اسئله وتعرف تحلها باذن الله بعد ما تقراها اكتر من مره. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته، واستمتع باجازتك يا صديقي.